20,000 feet above the German countryside, December 20th, 1943. The temperature is minus 60 degrees Celsius. In the cockpit of a Messerschmitt Bf 109, 28-year-old Oberleutnant Franz Stigler pulls his fighter into a climbing turn, scanning the winter sky for targets. His aircraft is painted matte black, a night fighter hastily pressed into day service because every available pilot is needed. Below him, the contrails of American bombers streak across the gray clouds heading home to England after bombing Bremen. Stigler has already shot down 2 4-engine bombers today, 27 confirmed kills total. If he gets one more, just one more bomber, he'll have 30 victories. 30 means the Knight's Cross, Germany's highest military honor. 30 means immortality. His radio crackles. Someone on the ground has spotted a crippled bomber flying alone barely above stalling speed. Stigler banks hard and pushes the throttle forward. The Daimler-Benz engine roars. This is it, his 30th kill. The culmination of years of combat from North Africa to the defense of the Reich. He spots the B-17 almost immediately. It's flying at 1,000 feet, dangerously low, trailing smoke. The fortress is painted olive drab with the marking N on its tail. Ye Olde Pub, though Stigler can't read the name from this distance. He closes in from behind, lining up his guns. The tail gunner should open fire any second now. B-17s are heavily armed. You don't approach one carelessly. But no bullets come. No tracers streak past his canopy. The tail position is silent. Stigler eases his fighter alongside the bomber, maybe 30 feet away. Close enough to see details. Close enough to understand what he's looking at. What he sees will change his life forever. The entire tail section is shot to pieces. Through the shattered fuselage, he can see inside the aircraft. The tail gunner is slumped over his guns, nearly decapitated by an exploding cannon shell. Blood has run down the gun barrels and frozen solid in the extreme cold. The vertical stabilizer is mostly gone. The rudder hangs by cables. Holes the size of dinner plates puncture the fuselage, exposing the interior to the killing wind. Stigler moves his fighter forward, staying parallel to the bomber. Through another hole, he sees the waist gunners. One is slumped against the wall, clearly wounded. Another is trying to render first aid, his hands shaking. Their eyes meet Stigler's through the gap in the fuselage. They're kids. Terrified kids barely out of their teens. The ball turret beneath the bomber hangs crooked, one of its mounting points blown away. The plexiglass nose is completely gone, sheared off by flak, leaving the bombardier and navigator exposed to winds that would freeze skin in seconds. Stigler can see ice forming on everything, can see men hunched against the cold, can see the desperation in how they move. This isn't a bomber anymore. This is a flying coffin held together by luck and the skill of whoever is flying it. One burst from his guns and the whole thing will disintegrate. Easy kill. 30 victories. The Knight's Cross. Stigler's finger rests on the trigger. He thinks about his commanding officer in North Africa, Gustav Rödel, a man who taught him that fighter pilots are warriors, not murderers. He remembers Rödel's words exactly, "You are fighter pilots first, last always. If I ever hear of any of you shooting at someone in a parachute, I'll shoot you myself." Men in parachutes, helpless, unable to fight back. You don't shoot them. It's not about honor or chivalry. It's about the line between soldier and executioner. Stigler looks at the crippled bomber again. Through the holes in the fuselage, he sees wounded men clinging to life. Men who can't fight back. Men in a plane that should have already crashed. To him, in this moment, they're in a parachute. He can't do it. 50 miles away in the cockpit of Ye Olde Pub, 21-year-old Second Lieutenant Charles Brown is dying. Not from wounds, though his shoulder is bleeding where shrapnel hit him, but from oxygen deprivation, hypothermia, and exhaustion so complete he can barely hold the yoke. His co-pilot Spencer Luke is in similar condition. Both men passed out earlier from lack of oxygen after German fighters shot holes in their oxygen system. They came to only when the plane dropped low enough for them to breathe without supplemental oxygen. Brown has no idea how he's still flying. He remembers the briefing this morning, his first mission as aircraft commander. Bremen, Focke-Wulf factory. Expect heavy resistance. 250 flak guns protecting the target. Swarms of fighters. They told him the truth. The mission started falling apart before they even reached the target. Flak hit them on the bomb run, shattering the nose, killing their number 2 engine, damaging number 4. The plane dropped out of formation, and German fighters swarmed them like sharks smelling blood. Brown counted at least 15 different fighters attacking over the next 10 minutes. Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt 109s coming in pairs, hammering them with cannon fire. The number 3 engine is producing maybe half power. Number 4 is barely running. They're flying on essentially 2 engines, and one of those is questionable. The hydraulics are shot, the electrical system is failing, the oxygen system is gone, half the control cables are severed. Brown is flying on manual reversion using sheer muscle to move surfaces that should be hydraulically assisted. His tail gunner is dead. He knows this because someone radioed it forward before the intercom died. Hugh Eckenrode, 23 years old, from South Carolina, dead in the tail of a bomber that's probably going to crash in the next few minutes anyway. Brown has no idea where he is. His instruments are mostly dead. His compass spins uselessly. He's flying by instinct, heading west, hoping he's actually going toward England and not deeper into Germany. Then he sees the black Messerschmitt. It appears on his left wing so close, Brown can see the pilot's face. His heart stops. This is it, the fighter that will finish them. They have no way to defend themselves. The top turret is jammed. The ball turret is damaged. The tail guns are silent. The waist gunners have maybe one working gun between them. Brown watches the German pilot waiting for the guns to fire, waiting for the cannon shells that will blow them out of the sky. But the Messerschmitt just flies there holding formation. The German pilot stares at Brown through the cockpit glass. His expression is unreadable. Brown has no idea what's happening. Is this some kind of psychological torture? A cat playing with a mouse before the kill? The German gestures, points down, makes a landing motion with his hand. Brown realizes what he's asking land. Surrender. Come down and you'll be prisoners, but you'll live. Brown shakes his head. No, they're going home. Or they're dying trying. He's not spending the war in a POW camp. Not after this. Not after what they've been through. The Messerschmitt stays with them. Minutes pass. 5 minutes. 10. The German isn't attacking. He's just flying there. Parallel. Like an escort. Brown's mind is too fogged with exhaustion and oxygen deprivation to process what's happening. Maybe he's hallucinating. Maybe he died back over Bremen, and this is some fever dream, on the way to whatever comes next. They fly west. The German stays with them. Brown sees the landscape changing. Beneath them sees they're approaching the coast. If they can just make it to the North Sea, if they can just get over water, maybe they have a chance. Then he sees the flak batteries. Anti-aircraft guns line the coast pointed skyward, ready to shoot down any Allied aircraft trying to escape. Ye Olde Pub is a sitting duck, flying low and slow, unable to take evasive action. Brown braces for the flak that will kill them. It doesn't come. The guns stay silent. Brown doesn't understand why until he realizes the Messerschmitt is still there, flying in close formation on their wing. The German gunners can see it. They're not firing because they might hit their own fighter. The German pilot is shielding them, using his aircraft as a screen to protect an enemy bomber from German guns. They cross the coast. The gray North Sea stretches ahead, 250 miles of freezing water between them and England. Brown knows the statistics. A B-17 can't ditch successfully in the North Sea. The waves are too high. The water is too cold. If they go down, they're dead. But they're over water now, out of German airspace. The Messerschmitt peels away, climbing to the left. As he goes, the German pilot raises his hand to his forehead. A salute. Then he's gone. Brown stares at the empty sky where the Messerschmitt was. His co-pilot looks at him. Neither man speaks. What words exist for what just happened? They fly for 2 more hours. The number 4 engine finally quits completely. Number 3 is running rough, threatening to tear itself apart. Brown is navigating by dead reckoning and prayer, hoping he's going the right direction, hoping England will appear before they run out of altitude or fuel, or both. The English coast materializes out of the mist like a miracle. Brown has no idea where he is, just that it's England, and that's enough. He spots an airfield, doesn't recognize it, doesn't care. He's putting this airplane down right now before it falls apart around them. The landing is controlled crash more than anything else. Ye Olde Pub hits hard, bounces, settles. Brown cuts the engines, the ones still running, and the silence is deafening after hours of engine roar and wind screaming through bullet holes. They're on the ground. They're alive. All of them except Eckenrode. Against odds so long they might as well have been impossible, they made it home. RAF seething Norfolk. Brown will later learn this is where they landed a base for the 448th Bomb Group. Not their home field, but close enough. Ambulances rush out to the bomber. Ground crew swarm around it, staring in disbelief at the damage. Someone later counts over 400 bullet and shrapnel holes. The tail section is shot to pieces. The nose is gone. One stabilizer is hanging by cables. It's the most heavily damaged B-17 anyone has ever seen that was still flying. At the debriefing, Brown tells his story. Everything. The fighters, the flak, the long flight home. And the German pilot. The Messerschmitt that appeared on their wing and escorted them to safety. The intelligence officer listens without expression. When Brown finishes, there's a long silence. Then they classify the entire mission as secret. No one can know about this, Brown is told. The idea that a German pilot would spare an American crew contradicts the narrative of the war. It might make other crews complacent, thinking German pilots are soft. It might undermine morale. The mission never happened. The escort never happened. You will not speak of this to anyone. Brown nods. He's too exhausted to argue. He just wants to sleep for a week. But the memory stays with him. The black Messerschmitt, the pilot's face, the salute. He'll carry it for 43 years before he speaks of it again. Franz Stigler lands at his airfield near Bremen, Ground crew swarm his aircraft, checking for damage, refueling, rearming. Someone asks if he got anything, and he kills. Stigler shakes his head. No contact with the enemy today. It's a lie. But it's a lie he has to tell because the truth would get him court-martialed and probably executed. He let an enemy bomber escape. Not just escape, he actively protected it, escorted it to safety, prevented German guns from shooting it down. In Nazi Germany, that's treason. He fills out his flight report, routine patrol, no engagement. He signs it and files it away. No one will ever know what he did. Stigler continues flying for the Luftwaffe. Eventually, he transitions to Me-262 jet fighters, joins Jagdverband. 44 survives the war. When Germany falls, he returns to his family home in Bavaria to find it destroyed by bombing. His parents are dead. His brother, a night fighter pilot, was killed in 1940. The world he knew is gone. In the chaos of post-war Germany, Stigler emigrates to Canada. He settles in Vancouver, becomes a machinist, builds a quiet life. He never speaks of his time in the Luftwaffe, never mentions the war, never tells anyone about the B-17 he spared. Charlie Brown completes his combat tour. 29 missions total. He goes home to West Virginia, goes to college on the GI Bill, tries to build a normal life. But the war follows him. Nightmares jolt him awake, sweating and shaking. He sees Eckenrode's body slumped over the guns. He sees German fighters coming in, firing, tearing his aircraft apart. He sees the black Messerschmitt on his wing and wakes up wondering if that part was even real. Brown rejoins the Air Force in 1949, serves through the Cold War, retires as a lieutenant colonel in 1972, settles in Miami, Florida, starts a business, tries to forget the war. But he can't forget the German pilot. In 1986, Brown attends a combat pilots reunion called Gathering of the Eagles. Someone asks if he has any memorable missions from the war. Brown hesitates. He's never told this story publicly. The mission was classified secret, but the war ended 40 years ago. Surely it doesn't matter anymore. He tells the story of December 20th, 1943, the crippled bomber, the German fighter that appeared on his wing, the escort, the salute. The room goes silent. Then someone asks, "Did that really happen?" Brown realizes his own memory is hazy. Combat injury, oxygen deprivation, decades of time. It's all blurred together. The more he thinks about it, the more he questions himself. Did a German pilot really escort him? Or is this something his traumatized mind invented a story to make sense of surviving when he shouldn't have? He decides he needs to find the German pilot, not just for the story, but to prove to himself that it actually happened. The search begins in 1986. Brown writes letters to the Air Force, to German veteran organizations, to anyone who might have records of Luftwaffe pilots who flew near Bremen on December 20th, 1943. Most letters go unanswered. The few responses he gets offer no help. Records were destroyed in the war. Pilots are dead or scattered across the world. Finding one specific German fighter pilot from one specific day is impossible. 4 years pass. Brown is ready to give up. Maybe it was all a dream. Maybe his memory is false. Maybe he'll never know. Then in January 1990, a letter arrives from Canada. The return address means nothing to Brown. He opens it. 4 words on the first line. I was the one. The letter is from Franz Stigler. He saw Brown's query in a newsletter for former Luftwaffe pilots. He remembers that day in 1943, remembers the crippled B-17, remembers the decision he made. Brown reads the letter 3 times, his hands shaking. Stigler describes his aircraft, the black Bf-109. Describes Brown's bomber, the shot-up B-17, flying at 1,000 feet, trailing smoke. Describes the escort. The salute. It's all real. Every detail matches Brown's memory. Brown calls the number at the bottom of the letter. A voice answers with a slight German accent. This is Franz Stigler. For a long moment, Brown can't speak. Then, "You saved my life." "Yes," Stigler says simply. "I remember." They talk for 2 hours, comparing memories, filling in details. Stigler describes what he saw through the holes in the bomber, the wounded crew, the dead tail gunner, the desperation in their movements. Brown describes what he saw, the black fighter appearing on his wing, the confusion, the terror that turned to hope. Stigler explains why he did it, the words his commander spoke about men in parachutes, the line he couldn't cross. "To me, you were in a parachute," he says. "I could see you couldn't fight. What honor is there in killing defenseless men?" Brown is crying. He doesn't remember the last time he cried, but he's crying now, decades of tension and trauma, and wondering finally released. They agree to meet. In June 1990, Brown flies to Seattle. Stigler drives down from Vancouver. They meet in a hotel lobby. 2 old men, both in their late 60s, both carrying the weight of a war that ended 45 years ago. They recognize each other instantly, not from that day in 1943, when they only glimpsed each other through cockpit glass and bullet holes, but from something deeper, a connection forged in an impossible moment. They embrace like brothers. The friendship that follows heals both men. Brown's nightmares stop. The trauma that haunted him for 47 years finally loses its grip. Stigler, who carried the secret alone for decades, can finally speak about the choice he made. They travel together, tell their story at schools, and military functions, appear on television, write a book. Brown introduces Stigler to his surviving crew members, grown men with grandchildren now, but still the terrified kids Stigler saw through the holes in the fuselage. They thank him, tears streaming down weathered faces. Because of his choice, they lived. They had families, careers, lives that wouldn't have existed if Stigler had pulled the trigger that day. The mathematics are staggering. 9 crew members survived. They had children. Those children had children. By 2008, the simple count of descendants exceeds 100 people, all of whom exist, because a German fighter pilot chose mercy over glory. Stigler meets them all at a gathering. He's overwhelmed. 100 people, 3 generations all alive, because of a decision he made in 3 seconds over Germany in 1943. Someone asks him, "Did you ever regret not shooting, not getting your 30th kill?" The Knight's Cross. Stigler smiles. "I got something better than the Knight's Cross," he says. He pulls out a book inscribed with a note he wrote to Brown. "In 1940, I lost my only brother as a night fighter. On December 20th, 1943, I was able to save a B-17 from destruction. The pilot, Charlie Brown, is for me as precious as my brother was. Thanks, Charlie. Your brother Franz." Charlie Brown and Franz Stigler remain inseparable for the rest of their lives. 2 men who met as enemies in the frozen sky above Germany, who should have killed each other, who instead chose humanity over hatred. They talk weekly, visit frequently, finish each other's stories at speaking engagements. On November 24, 2008, Charlie Brown dies in Miami at age 86. Franz Stigler in Vancouver receives the news by phone. He hangs up and sits in silence for a long time. 4 months later, on March 22, 2008, Franz Stigler dies at age 92. His last words are reported to be, "I love you, Charlie." The story doesn't end with their deaths. It lives on in the book they inspired, A Higher Call, by Adam Makos. It lives on in a song by the Swedish metal band Sabaton, No Bullets Fly, which tells their story to a new generation. It lives on in schools where their tale is taught as an example of compassion in the darkest of times. In 2019, a surviving B-17 bomber in Oregon is repainted to honor Ye Olde Pub. The aircraft serial number 448543 now bears the markings of the bomber that refused to die and the crew that made it home against impossible odds. The real Ye Olde Pub never flew combat again after that December day. Too damaged to repair economically, it was returned to the United States and eventually scrapped. But its story survived. The story of 10 young men who flew into hell and came back. The story of a German ace who gave up glory to save his enemy. The story of a friendship that proved war is fought between nations, but humanity belongs to individuals. December 20th, 1943, 20,000 feet above Germany. A crippled bomber struggling home. A fighter pilot with his finger on the trigger 1 kill away from glory. And a choice that echoes through generations. Franz Stigler could have fired, should have fired by every military doctrine and oath he'd taken. One burst would have given him the Knight's Cross, made him a hero, added his name to the roll of German aces. Instead, he saluted. And in that salute, in that single gesture of respect between enemies, lies a truth more powerful than any weapon that even in the worst war, humanity ever fought, even in the mechanized slaughter of total war. Individual men could still choose kindness, could still choose to see the human being beyond the uniform. The B-17 that refused to die didn't survive because of armor or engineering or luck, though all those played their part. It survived because one man in 3 seconds made the most important decision of his life. And in making that choice, he saved not just 9 men, but proved something the war tried desperately to destroy. That compassion is stronger than hatred, that mercy is braver than violence, that the bonds of shared humanity transcend the boundaries of nation and flag. 79 years later, the story endures. Not because it changed the outcome of the war, it didn't. Not because it represents typical behavior, it certainly doesn't. But because it reminds us what's possible, even in impossible circumstances. Even in the frozen sky above enemy territory, with every reason to kill and no reason to spare, one man chose differently. And his enemy became his brother.